later I will just let them
Yeah.
in.
Okay.
So I will start transmitting on YouTube.
Yeah.
And
so what I will do is I will of course share the screen.
okay.
And then I will take away all the panels. So if you cannot hear me or anything happens, you just shout.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Sure. Perfect. I think you have the permission to share the screen if you
Yes.
want to test it. But in any case, I will just say some words before you start your presentation, if it's okay with you.
Yes. Yeah, I have the permission to yeah, you can
Sure.
start.
Okay, perfect. Wonderful. So welcome everyone. For those of you which are here with us on Zoom, and for those of you who will be following on YouTube or watching this the recording for the session for this new edition of the EuroWeb Book Corner on YouTube. You are all very welcome. We are very pleased to have you with us. And we would like to especially welcome our speaker, Eva Andersson Strand, who will be talking to us today about Joan Elizabeth Cutler's book, Crafting Minoanisation. I don't really think that Eva needs an introduction, especially on my part, but just to remind everyone, Eva is the director of the Center for Textile Research in the University of Copenhagen. She's a leading figure in textile research in general and textile archaeology in particular, with contributions to the understanding of textiles, textile economies, technologies, and textile cultures in several different historical and geographic settings. Here, and because we are talking about this book, Crafting Minoanisation, we should perhaps highlight her research into textile production in the Bronze Age Aegean, namely in the framework of the Tools and Textiles Text and Contexts Research Program, co-directed with our dear colleague and friend, Marie-Louise Novstu. So this makes, I think that no one would question this, but in any case, this would make Eva uniquely qualified to present to us today Joan Elizabeth Cutler's book, Crafting Minoanisation, Textiles, Crafts, Production, and Social Dynamics in the Bronze Age Southern Aegean, which was recently published by Oxbow Books as part of the prestigious Ancient Textiles series. But I will let Eva tell you about this book, about its author and how it came to be. So Eva, thank you so much for joining us today, and the floor is yours. You can start whenever you like.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and I will start immediately to share my presentation with you. So you just let me know when you can see it. Is it there?
Yes.
You can see the presentation? Wonderful.
Yes,
then I will just do some things here. Yeah. So, well, thank you very much again for the presentation, and thank you also very much for inviting me to present Jo's, what I think, fantastic work today. Jo passed away already much too young in 2018, but Jo was a very strong archaeologist working with Bronze Age Aegean, and I think everybody knows about Jo. Before I continue, I just want to give, let me see now here. Yeah, I immediately want to thank my colleagues and friends, Todd Whitlow and Margarita Gleba, who is the co-editor together with me for this publication, Marie-Louise, the lead editor for Ancient Textile series, Cyprian, who was Jo co-supervisor, and Carl Knappett and Nicoletta Mogliano, who was Jo's PhD examiners, and many, many more people. Without all this help, it would not have been possible for us to publish Jo's work. So in the following, I will give a short presentation of Jo and her background, and then give a brief presentation of her thesis, focus on her aims, research questions, and results. And I kindly ask you to note that this is not a review. All quotations are from Jo's publication, and it is her words, but I, of course, have chosen what to present. But I can also say that if Margarita was supposed to present, or Todd was supposed to present, the presentation might have been very different. Jo had a very, she came to archaeology quite late in her life. She had a BA in archaeology at the Institute of Archaeology at UCL that she completed in 2005. And she also holds a BA in humanities with classical studies that she completed in 2006. In 2006, she also completed her MA in Archaeology of Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East with her dissertation, Production Systems and Social Dynamics towards a cross-media approach to the Minoanisation of Southern Aegean in the mid-second millennium. She quite immediately after she finished her MA got a PhD, but in 2009 and 2010, she spent some months as a research day at the Center for Textile Research, and that is when I learned to know her. And she became a very good friend and a very good colleague. In 2011, she finished and defended her PhD thesis, Crafting Minoanisation, and that is actually the publication that we will talk about today. I will talk about today. And after she finished, she immediately received several research fellowships. In 2013, she got an Insta postdoctoral research fellowship, and also in 2013 until July 2015, she held the Marie Curie Intra-European Postdoctoral Fellowship through the Gerda Henkel Stiftung. In 2015, she held an ERC Research Associate in the project Production Consumption, Textile Economy and Urbanization in the Mediterranean Europe 1000 to 500 BCE, the PROCON project that was headed by Margarita Gleba, who you said in the middle of the pictures here below. And it was hosted at the MacDonald Institute of Archaeological Research at the University of Jo didn't have the time to finish her thesis. She didn't have the time to publish it. And this was always the problem. And this was something that we discussed, even if she was publishing frequently articles, often co-authored with other people. But this is only Jo's work. As was said in the beginning, it's published in the Ancient Textile series. It's number 33 by Oxbow in Oxford. It has 9 main chapters. It's altogether 308 pages, but it also has 69 subchapters and more than 284 figures, graphs, and tables. Jo recorded tools from more than 25 sites in the Bronze Age Southern Aegean, and on the maps here that is from the book, you see all the sites that she visited and that she recorded the tools, mostly loom weights from during a very long time. In the introduction, Jo wrote, Minoanisation has traditionally been interpreted in terms of free models, assumed to be relevant throughout the area, though usually excluding the southern Greek mainland. By presenting, however tacitly, Minoanisation as a homogeneous process, the established models fails to sufficiently engage with the complexity of the evidence and the possibility that Minoanisation may have been the result of multiple processes. The present study is situated with this growing body of research on the choices made by active agents and addresses the question of Minoanisation through an examination of the adoption of Cretan technology in the wider Southern Aegean, exploring why Minoanisation styles and technologies may have been adopted and or adapted by communities or groups within communities. Jo meant that by examining whether different communities adopted Cretan styles and practices across a range of media or were more selective in their choices, it is possible to gain a better understanding of the patterns and reasons for interactions with the region and how these changed over time. She also said that by examining how technological skills and techniques are learned and considering possible mechanisms for the transmission of such technical knowledge and know-how, new perspectives can be proposed concerning the processes through which Cretan techniques were taken up and imitated abroad. And such an approach does offer a way of moving beyond the traditional Crete-centric approach to the study of Cretan influences in the Southern Aegean, in which the appearance of Cretan material culture features are discussed mainly in terms of Cretan political and/or economic expansions. The principal focus in her thesis was the adoption and use of Cretan weaving technology. The presence at site across the Southern Aegean of quantities of discoid loom weights of a distinctly Cretan type provides evidence that by the early late Bronze Age, Cretan weaving technology had been widely adopted within the region. Since loom weights are widely distributed across the region and are relatively abundant, the weaving evidence provides a good data set to compare with the ceramic evidence. Furthermore, since textiles like pottery, and perhaps even more so, can be both elite and non-elite commodities, the study uptake the Cretan weaving technology can potentially provide insights into the economic and social strategies employed by different subgroups within various communities. In the second chapter, she examined the nature of the evidence of the Minoanisation of the Southern Aegean in order to provide the historical and material background for and establish the broader context of the discussion of the adoption of Cretan warp-weighted loom technology, which forms the primary focus in this thesis. In the first section, she reviews the history of archaeological research in the Southern Aegean, and in the following section, she considered the data sets themselves, examining the material evidence for the uptake of Cretan style objects and cultural traits, as well as the adoption of other Cretan technologies. In the end of the chapter, Jo concludes, in attempting to interpret the Minoanisation phenomenon, the data do not speak for themselves. The differences in the quantity and quality of data from different sites give a different initial impression for each site, which is hard to dispel. It is often difficult to compare like with like, given different levels of publication and analysis that various material culture assemblage have received. Problem-oriented models approaches therefore needs to be systematically applied to the data if we are to gain insight into the multiple processes that are likely to account for the significant variation evident in the material record. In the third chapter, the interpretative background, Jo first does do a critical review of the traditional models for Minoanisation, and then she presents the conceptual framework informing the approach adopted in this thesis. And she writes, in examining the adoption and use of Cretan textile technology at sites across the Southern Aegean, I draw on the body of social theory associated with the relation between material culture, social included technological practice, and social identity, and the transmission of craft knowledge. These themes are, as well as possible mechanisms and motivations for culture change, are explored in the next chapters. In chapter 4, Social Identity, Technology Choice and Technological Change, she discussed Minoan identity, the social situated social situated nature of technology practices, the transmission of craft skills, the adoption of new technology, and thinking about connections. Can I just ask, is everything okay? Can you hear me?
Yes, Eva, everything is okay. It's just someone is unmuted for a moment.
Yes.
But
okay, just wondering. I continue.
No, everything is fine. Thank you.
Yes, okay. So in the end of chapter 4, Joe summarizes and writes, Davis was the first to problematize the adoption of Cretan loom weights, the warp-weighted loom, considering why individuals may have wanted to engage with new textile technology. The development of new methods for the analysis of loom weight assemblages now makes it possible to achieve greater insights into types of textiles that could have been made at a given site, thus enabling a more nuanced examination of why warp-weighted loom technology may have been adopted. And furthermore, the evidence for the adoption and use of Cretan weaving technology at the range of Southern Aegean settlement is presented in the next section. In order to gain insights in this phenomenon, it is necessary to assess the nature of contemporary textile production on Crete itself. And since there has been no systematic Iceland-wide functional analysis of Cretan textile technology during the Middle and early late Bronze Age, the evidence for the nature of textile production from a range of sites across Crete is first presented. But before she presents the results from her recordings and analysis of textile tools from Crete and the other settlements, there is chapter 5. And chapter 5 is the chapter on textiles and textile technology. And I don't think I need to present it further for this audience, because this is the textile chant operatoire that I think that everybody is familiar with. She writes about the raw material, flax and wool, fiber procurement, preparation. She writes about thread production, weaving technique, loom types, dyeing and finishing. She also touched upon the gender, if textiles are only for female technologies. And then she also writes from textile tools to textiles, spindle wheels and threads and loom weights and fabrics. In chapter 6, which is one of the largest chapters, she starts to give an introduction of the background to the Neolithic and pre-Palatial time on Crete. She continued to write about the documentary evidence for organized textile production and exchange of textiles in the wider Eastern Mediterranean and Middle East. And then she starts to write about the archaeological evidence for the nature of textile production in the proto-Palatial and the Neo-Palatial Crete. And you can see, I think you recognize most of the sites that she have worked with. Knossos, Festos, Ayatriada, Komos, Mallia, Sierra, Moklos, Palaikastro, Krania, just to mention a few of them. And for every site, every single site, she starts to write an introduction of the site, chronological and contextual, and she presents where the loom weights and the other textile tools are from. To more or less all the sites, she have drawings, she have the plans from the excavations, where the different houses and places are sorry, I have to go back. Where the different houses and where they have found the loom weights, and often also very detailed drawings of the plans where the loom weights have been found. And these are two drawings, the plan of Knossos, and then there is a plan of the loom weight basement that is quite well known. And then she continues, she does graphs, she do the recording, she measures the weight and the thickness among many different parameters, and she illustrates them in graphs. Here you can see 24 loom weights that they found in a cluster on the Royal Road South. and you see the weight and the thickness, and from the graph you then can read her interpretation of the different fabrics, what those type of loom weights, which type of yarn those fabrics was good to use for. And in this case, it's very thin thread that needs little tension in the loom. And this she does for every site. And she continued after Crete. She presents textile production in the wider Southern Aegean and continued to work with the Cyclades, the Southern Eastern Aegean with Miletus, and then also the Southeast Aegean. And what is also interesting is that she also works with the Southern Greek mainland that has been quite invisible before. She starts the discussion, or she has the discussion in chapter 8, craft production and social dynamics. And in this chapter, she discussed the adoption of Cretan weaving technology, externally or internally driven change. She discussed the weaving pan-Aegean fabrics, female mobility and the transmission of craft skills, different scales of use of the warp-weighted loom, ceramic and stone vessel technologies, Cretan ceramic and weaving technologies, a comparative perspective, strong ties, weak ties. And finally, in the conclusion, she writes, this work has sought to examine the phenomenon of Minoanisation through an examination of the adoption and use of Cretan technologies in the wider Southern Aegean, principally weaving technology. In doing so, its aim has been to move beyond the Creto-centric focus of traditional interpretative models, which sought a single answer, thereby treating Minoanisation as an essentially monolithic process. It has instead approached the question of Minoanisation through a study of the choices made by active agents in order to gain insights into why Minoanisation styles and technology may have been adopted and adapted by members of the Southern Aegean communities beyond Crete. In order to assess the adoption and use of the Cretan warp-weighted loom technology and the various Southern Aegean sites, it was necessary to take into account the nature of textile production on Crete itself, and the analysis revealed diverse production strategies. Different sites are likely to have been making different types and ranges of textiles. Some centers, notable Knossos and potentially also Festos, Ayatriada and Chania, appear to have been focusing on the production of more open warp fabrics, many of which are likely to have been weft dominant or faced in the Neo-Palatial period, while others, Komos, Mochlos, and Vera, were weaving denser fabrics that could have been more balanced. At sites such as Malia, Palaikastro, and Katosakro, a wider range of types appears that have been manufactured, including denser and more open warp varieties. In the Southern Aegean sentiment, it is therefore notable that with the exception of Miletus and Kythera, it is only the discrete type of loom weight that was in use. These weights would have been well suited for the production of the types of Cretan-style pattern textiles represented in the Acrotero frescoes. Furthermore, analysis of textile tool data has, as in the case of ceramics, indicated varying patterns of uptake and use of the warp-weighted loom at different sites. In some cases, such as Philokapi and Agina, there appears to have been only a limited employment of this loom type. At Aya Arini, the warp-weighted loom was in use in every structure in early late Bronze Age town, while at Akrotiri, only some of the buildings were using warp-weighted loom weight technology, but these are likely to have been produced in textiles for exchange. Microscopic examination of Southern Aegean textile tools has identified a significant number of loom weights and also some spindle whorls and pierced spools that are non-local. Since these objects, unlike pottery, are unlikely to travel as the result of exchange, their presence attests to a degree of mobility in the Bronze Age Aegean and indicates one in which the warp-weighted loom technology may have been transferred between communities. Since weaving was almost certainly a female occupation, the identification of non-local textile tools provides evidence of female mobility within the Southern Aegean during the Bronze Age. And at the end, Joe writes, the chronological and geographical diversity and the variations in patterns of adoption of different technology at different sites makes clear that it's no longer either productive or justifiable to consider Minoanisation as a single universal process. Engaging with producers and investigating the potential motivations of consumers as well as producers puts the focus for researchers much more clearer on the individual involved and their economic and social strategies played out in a local but interconnected social and political arenas. For me, Joe's book is still, even if it's more than 10 years since Joe finished it, is still very, very important work. I don't think we will ever see so many textile tools from the Southern Aegean collected in the same publication. So I think that is really, really fantastic. So Joe was an amazing scholar, but it was Joe's personality that made her truly unique. Joe was open to new ideas, but not always easy to convince if you did not have the right arguments. We never finished the discussion Joe and I had on the use of the two-beam loom, horizontal loom. But she was considerate, she was always kind, and she was very helpful with everything from proofreading to listening to concerns of friends and colleagues. And I really, really still miss her quite a lot. So finally, I would again like to thank all the colleagues that have helped to make this publication come true. And above all, to thank Jo for all the fantastic work that she did. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva. It was a wonderful presentation. And I've never met Joanne, but I am also so glad that this EuroWeb Book Corner can serve as a way to pay homage to her and to her work, and to give some visibility. Not that it needs, but some more visibility to this recently published work, which really, as you've shown, the scope of it and the reach of it and the ambition of it is really, really inspiring. We have a comment on the chat from Sophia, who says, thank you, Eva. It was very touching to take us through Joanne's pioneering work. We owe her a lot for opening new roads to the knowledge of Aegean textiles. She's greatly missed. So yeah, joining in.
Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else in the room has any other comments or questions, maybe.
Yeah.
If not, I will just say that listening to your presentation, these issues of cultural contact and the dissemination of technology that so often is interpreted in terms of like acculturation or cultural influence is really a topic that I'm very interested in. It's also, I worked with the Iron Age, so that in the Mediterranean, so that is a period that also sees much of the same phenomena, and it's great to see this kind of work. And Joanne's work really seems like it offers so many methodological and theoretical insights that can just inspire us to also think about cultural contact and knowledge transference in other contexts too. So that is also a great contribution.
Yeah, it was a great contribution, and we have not, but the research have developed.
Of course.
Minoanisation is, of course, more, the theories, the models are more developed today. All the methods have developed, But we decided, because we wanted this is Joe's publication, so we have not changed everything, more than comma mistakes and things like that, when editing her publication. And I also want to say that in the publication there is also a list of all the articles that she has written, and many of them are also published after she passed away, and there is still a few to come that she is co-authored, especially in the ProCon project together with Margarita Glebe.
Thank you again, Eva.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone wants to add anything. I don't think we have any comments on YouTube either. No.
I realized it was quite a short presentation, but it was so.
It was perfect. It was perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it is a challenge to present someone else's work.
It is, yes.
So yeah,
of course.
But I hope that you have all got an idea about the book. And
I did, and I'm sure that the people who watch this this session later on YouTube will be really inspired and really interested to go look for the book and to read it.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great thing. Okay, then if there are no further comments or questions, I will thank Eva very much again, and I will welcome all of those watching here and later too to join us on the 7th of June for another EuroWeb Book Corner. Next time we will have Susanna Harris, Cecily Braun, and Marta Zuchowska. We will present another book in the Ancient Textiles series, Textiles in Ancient Mediterranean Iconography. So we look forward to seeing you all there. And Eva, thank you again, and I hope to meet you again soon.
Yeah, in person. That would be great.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Goodbye. Thank you all for coming. See you soon.
Thank you.
Goodbye.